growing to show, and it starts now. So this is for something a bit special. It's spring bulbs, but it's for a really special project. Something I have never done before, but I've got lots of support, so I'm hoping this is going to be a really good thing to do this year. And of course, I'm going to bring you guys along with me, so some of you might want to join in and try this for the first time too. Now here's the thing, it's spring bulbs. I grow spring bulbs every year. I grow heaps of them. In fact, as you guys know, I think we bought about 900 this year. This is different. This year, I'm going to have a go at growing daffodils to show. So yep, so I'm going to grow them specifically for the purpose of showing them at our horticultural kind of spring bulb show. So you guys know I'm a member of the Royal Caledonian Horticultural Society, and I did that video where I went and entered my onions in a veg show for the first time. Welcome to the Caley show at Saughton Park. It's quite exciting. There's loads of people here, there's loads of flowers, it all looks fantastic. The veggies, you should see the veggies. A guy just turned up with a wheelbarrow full of entries. Well, while I was there, the lovely Pam convinced me to have a go at growing daffodils for the spring bulb show. This woman is enthusiastic about daffodils. But the thing is, right, here's a story for you. When I first started gardening, daffodils were the flower I said I would not grow in my garden. I thought they were just really boring. They were everywhere. Because that's the thing, here in Scotland, my whole life growing up, all of the parks and all of the kind of like townland and that kind of thing, they were always covered in daffodils, and it was always the same bog standard daffodils. So I thought daffodils are boring. How wrong I was. There are so many varieties of daffodils. So many differences, in fact, that for the spring show, they've had to break them all up into divisions, and there are loads of divisions. So I'm going to enter a few of them. Now, I've been lucky because I got to go along to a workshop that the Caley do to teach you about getting spring bulbs going for the show. And it was brilliant because I have lots of questions and stuff I don't understand. So today we're in the greenhouse in Saughton Park. It's the Caley greenhouse because we're doing a workshop on your spring bulbs. So I'm doing the daffodils, but this is all about how you grow for show. Now, one of the best things about having something like the Caley and the workshops is having those people to speak to who have the experience, because there are a lot of things to think about if you want to do this as a proper serious project. And that's the thing, right? I should probably pedal back on that. You obviously don't have to. You can just grow your spring bulbs in the garden, daffodils, tulips, hyacinths, whatever it is. And then on the day of the show, you go around, and if you've got any really, really good ones, you can cut them and then go and enter them in the show. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that experience of what is it like to grow specifically to show. The start to finish process of being very deliberate. Now, it was brilliant having that experience of being able to go to the workshop because I had Pam on hand and I could ask her all those questions that, you know, come up when you start looking into this. The first thing being, there are so many different types of daffodils, so they have to break them into divisions in order to be able to judge them. So you have to decide what daffodils you're going to grow so that you know what divisions you're entering. And you can enter as many of the divisions as you want. But I thought, since I'm technically a beginner at growing for show, I would limit myself. So I looked at what that was and chose daffodils that I liked in those divisions. But the thing is, I didn't 100% understand how the divisions really worked. And a lot of the explanations I were finding were quite technical, and it was using kind of the language of horticulturalists and people in the know. So Pam explained it to me brilliantly. And now it feels really simple and I understand it. Okay folks, here we are then. We're in the Sauchton Park, the Caley garden, the New Fancy greenhouse, with Pam, who is the Honorary Vice President of the Caley. So I'm picking your brains.
She hopes.
Yeah, let's hope your brain's working today. So for the first time then, I'm going to have a go at growing for show. So I'm doing some daffodils for the spring bulb show, which you are the expert on the spring bulb show stuff.
I'm not an expert, I'm just passionate about spring. Because you have winter, and then all of a sudden you get flowers, and they're lovely. And I cannot for the life of me understand why Queen Victoria did not like daffodils.
Okay, confession. When I first started gardening, I didn't particularly like daffodils. But
And people think they're just yellow daffodils. There are yellow ones, white ones, pinky ones.
double coloured ones.
Yes.
Funny shapes.
Yes.
So as you can tell, I'm kind of now quite passionate about my daffodils.
I noticed that you planted some of the Division 4s, which are the ones which are, some people call them carnation type, some people call them rose type. They're actually just called doubles.
Doubles. That's a point though, you said division, right? So for all the people that don't do this kind of thing, or maybe thinking they'd like to, but it puts you off when you don't understand language.
I know.
Divisions, what does that mean?
Well, what they've done is, because there are so many different types of daffodil, they've split them into different groupings. So Division 1 is a daffodil which has a big long nose.
I wondered where you were going with that.
Yes. And the nose is longer than the petals.
Okay. That's nice and simple.
Very easy.
Okay.
A Division 2, the petals are longer than the nose.
Okay.
But it's still quite a long. And then a Division 3 has got a squat nose.
It's a little pug daffodil.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it gets a bit more complicated. So 1, 2, 3, and then you get the 4s, which are the doubles, which we talked about just now. Division 5 is less common.
Okay.
So I won't worry with that one. Then you get Division 6, where its petals are going backwards. Okay.
Okay, right.
So you will. I think you might have planted Jetfire.
No, I didn't.
But I think
But
Linda did.
yeah.
Okay. A Jetfire has its petals going backwards a little bit, and that's it's called cyclaminius. So it goes,
Okay, that makes sense.
it goes back. Then the other common ones are, you get 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Okay, it gets quite,
And then 12 and 13 are ones that don't fit in anywhere else.
So basically what you're telling me is daffodils are just as exciting as any other kind of
Absolutely.
There's
Lots of different
it's much more than what you see just in your local park.
Yeah, but even in the local park, they have quite a few interesting plants these days. They don't have just bog standard yellow ones.
I'm going to go round and start looking at things now.
Yeah, I know.
So now that I know about the daffodils, right, I've bought daffodils specifically to do this with. I've got all my plants for the garden, but these I've bought separately, and that's these guys here, and I've got them from Scamp, who are down south, and it's a company that do a lot of these really high quality bulbs that folk that do the whole showing thing, they buy them from them. Now there's also a cool thing with this. There is one set of daffodil bulbs that I'm growing that I don't know what they are, and this is quite a fun thing. So the Caley have something called the Scamp Challenge, and I'm doing that. It's a bit of an honour that I'm getting to do this because it's not normally something they let a complete beginner do, but Pam's totally encouraged me to get into it this year and try it, and she's kind of got me involved in this. So what the Scamp Challenge is one daffodil variety that the guys at Scamp, Adrian, has actually sent to Pam at the Caley, and those of us who are entering are all growing it. All of us are growing the same one. We're allowed to enter one bloom into the Scamp Challenge, and we don't know what variety it is or anything. It's come and we've just been given them, and that's what we're doing. Now the thing is, because I'm learning and I wanted to bring you guys along, I have done some of my bulbs in the Caley garden. So I went to the workshop and we planted up our bulbs there, and we had all of that fantastic knowledge of Pam and Margaret and the others helping us. And then we got to put them in the plunge at the Caley. I'll explain that because that's a whole new thing on me too. But what I'm going to do is I've got some of the same varieties that I'm going to put up here and I'm going to grow here, as well as some others, so that I can show you guys all about it and bring you along. And in true YouTube fashion, we'll have a bit of a comparison when we lift all the bulbs in February to see the ones that grew in the Caley plunge versus the ones I'm doing here. And then come show day, we can compare again. Now the first thing, pots. So I'm growing them in pots, and this is kind of a standard thing. Like I said, you don't have to. You can just go and pick blooms from your garden to show, because a lot of what you show you'll actually show as cut flowers. But there are divisions, if you like, or there are sections of the competition that you can actually submit a whole pot of blooms. Now the thing is, for doing that, you have to grow them in a pot that is 3 litres or less. 3 litres is the maximum, okay? It's so that everyone is growing in the same environment, the same sort of thing. That does pose a lot of challenges. So I've got some 3 litre pots, because it's that time of year where nobody is selling all the stuff you need. So I've got some 3 litre pots, and I have made up my mix, okay? And what I've done, now all the people who grow have their own mixes and their own things they do, and they all keep it really secret because obviously it's a competition. At the workshop, Pam was quite adamant that she gave us the best quality compost she could get, and that's what we planted our bulbs in. However, I've made a mix, and here's why. I'm doing this for my garden, and the plunge at the Caley where the bulbs are going is in the corner of a sheltered courtyard, so it's going to get way less rain than it's going to get in my garden. There'll be way less of that whole battering it and, you know, just the nastiness of the world. So I'm making an incredibly free draining mix for mine because I'm worried about the amount of rain they're going to have to suffer in the garden. But there we go. So let's do this then. First variety, precocious. Now, 5 bulbs. What you're going to see, that's a bit different from when I plant bulbs in the garden. I always tell you guys, pointy side up and plant the bulbs 2 to 3 times their depth, okay? That's not 3 times their depth, Eli. I'm not going to do that here, okay? Now, different growers will put these bulbs in at different heights. I can't advise you on this one because I've never done it before, but I can kind of explain why I think that has happened. Because again, this is about me as a beginner doing this, learning as I go, and I'll try and explain why I think people do things. If you're only allowed a certain size pot to grow in, there is only a certain amount of compost and nutrients in this pot. So if I don't bury them very deep, it means there's more compost for these little guys to keep them going. Now, I have seen some of the show growers put these bulbs on the very, very, very top of the pot. They just literally sit them on the top of the pot, press them in a tiny bit, and that's them done, okay? Pam, however, advised not to do that, to bury them up to their neck, okay? So I'm going to do a mix just to see, but other than that, it is the standard approach. Put the bulbs in your pot, don't let them touch each other, just give them a wee bit of space between. There we go. So I have 5 bulbs, all precocious, in my pot. It's that simple. Great Leap. This is one that I planted with Pam at the workshop, and she's written the details on for us. So this is a division 4. That's one of the ones that's what you call a double. I call them frilly. They're a bit more interesting than your standard daffodils. That's what this is. So I've brought home a set because I'm going to grow them in the garden too. And these are the ones I was telling you about are going to be that comparison. So 5 bulbs of Great Leap. Same again. So I'll put one in the middle and then the other 4 opposite. And I'll give them a wee cover. Again, making sure they're not touching, making sure the neck is out of the compost. Great Leap. Right, I'll get the rest potted up and then I'll join you out in the garden and we can talk about the plunge and what that is. The plunge, here we go then. The plunge was the bit that I think confused me the most when I started looking into the whole growing spring bulbs for show thing. And a lot of folk talked about putting it in the plunge and taking it out the plunge and how important the dates of taking it out the plunge were. But I couldn't find anything that explained what the plunge was or why you used it. However, thankfully the lovely Pam did help with that one.
This is what we do here is we call it plunging.
Okay.
So we've put them in here and then we'll, later on this afternoon, we will put the sand all over the top. So it's entirely covered.
Right,
and
okay.
As you can see, it's going to be a good 3-4 inches of sand. And you just leave them there until Valentine's Day.
Right, I'm going to ask you this then. Number one, why do we do this?
Because, we do it because it's easy.
Right, okay.
It's easy if you want a show to put it all in a pot and to keep that variety. Because don't forget, you've planted a few different varieties. Somebody else has planted a lot more varieties, and therefore, if you just planted them in the garden, they're fine. You can enter plants you've got in the garden. But plants have an awful habit of creeping or not doing what you want them to do exactly when you want them.
Yeah.
With this, it's much more controllable.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to cover them in sand. You can cover them in leaves, a lot of leaves as long as it's deep and things like that.
That's what I was going to ask next, was about the sand. Was that important? But it's, I guess this is like...
We used to plant it under soil. But when we moved here, I didn't have a huge supply of spare soil, spare compost. So
sand?
I use sand.
So basically what we're doing is we're mimicking just growing our bulbs in the garden, but it's much more controllable.
Yes.
Because if we're growing for show, so we're trying to get everything perfect for a specific day.
That is the hard thing. So when we take them out, you then got to encourage them to be ready for the spring show.
So that's the whole next thing. So Valentine's Day around about then, we're going to take our things out of the plunge, and that's when it's going to get exciting.
Yes. I'll send everybody who's taken part a picture, because I will cover this when I've got the sand on. I then put mesh on it to make sure anybody who's got tulips doesn't lose all their tulips. Because tulips are prone to being eaten by certain things.
Okay, luckily the little furry things, Okay, this is brilliant. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, so you get a tea break now. You go and drink your tea, and I will now go home and start doing this at home with the other daffodils I've got.
I shall look forward to seeing them.
Excellent, thank you so much. So this is my plunge in the garden then. Now, all I've done is I've repurposed my big raised bed at the end. I've taken all the soil out that was in it, because I'm going to try and make this as controlled an environment as I can. And I've put down some old bags on the bottom to protect the pots from just whatever is in the bottom, the fact that it gets really wet and stuff. But I've made sure there's loads of drainage as well. And I've packed the bottom with sand, again, to help with that drainage and just keep control of the situation. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pack the tops of all the pots with sand so that the sand is on top and it's pressing those bulbs into the pots, okay? Now, I'm going to fill the whole thing up, but I don't have enough sand to do that, so it's going to be a mix of, when I run out of sand, the last of it is going to get topped up with my pot and mix that I use in my raised beds. Now, I did ask, because all the ones I saw, they only used sand, and I did wonder about why. What is it about the sand? But Pam explained you don't have to use sand, you can just use compost. But most people are in the other situation from me, where they're making a plunge somewhere and they don't have enough nice compost to then fill it up with, so they use sand. But I suppose sand has the benefit of being really, really free draining, and given I said I didn't want this to get all wet, I want to control it. So that's what I've got to do now then. I'm going to get this all packed in. Now, it's good to have all this nice weight on the bulbs, because bulbs are notorious for moving. You plant them and they appear, I was going to say miles away from where you plant, inches away at least, and they're famous for actually moving up and down in your soil, all that kind of thing. So this nice heavy sand is going to help to hold them all in place, which is why I'm doing this by hand rather than just pouring it, because I don't want to dislodge anything. I've done that once already. And now that I know the pots and bulbs are all nice and secure, I'll just be a bit quicker and I'll get it poured in. Turns out I did have enough sand after all. So what I've done is I've topped this up so there's a good 4 or 5 inches of sand on those pots above the bulbs. Last thing I have to do is a bit of protection, and that's what this chicken wire is for. Want to protect my lovely show bulbs from any little critters that might want to go in and steal them or have a nibble. So we have real problems with squirrels in the garden at the minute. That's what this is going to be. I just have to get this fixed on now, and that's us done. That's my bulbs in the plunge. Now they're going to stay here until roughly Valentine's Day. Now, here's one of these things. Now, I did actually talk about dates a long time ago with you guys when we were sowing our onion seeds, and I was telling you about the tradition in the UK of sowing them on Boxing Day. Now, the reason for that is it's a memorable date, but it's roughly around that time. It is the same with Valentine's Day on the plunge. There are 2 dates that people use. One is Burns Night in January, and the other is Valentine's Day in February. And those are the dates that people use to take their bulbs out of the plunge. And again, there'll be a lot of choice on these dates based on their experience and the type of bulbs they're growing. So roughly Valentine's Day is when you guys will see me take these bulbs out. We'll see what kind of growth there is, if any, and then the whole process of bringing them on and controlling their growth so they are perfect for the day of the show. That's when it'll all happen. So I've got to get cleaned up now, but yeah, spring bulb show. Are you up for it? Are you going to enter yours? See you folks.